I'd like to call to order the Plan Zone Commission meeting of today, October 2nd. We're running a minute or so behind. We have a new commissioner tonight I'd like to introduce. Her name's Jane Schneider. Jane, could you introduce yourself and give us just a little background first?
Surely. What am I on?
Did you press your second button?
Yeah, it's red. Schneider, I live in Davenport and have lived here for about 7 years. Previous to
I'm sorry, try the one to your right.
this one?
There you go.
There we go. Okay. So my name is Jane Schneider. I live in Davenport and have lived here for 7 years. Previous to that, lived on the Illinois side in Moline in Rock Island. I'm president of Rural Mortgage. I'm very interested in and involved in a lot of community organizations and feel like it's very important to give back. So I'm very interested in helping here in the city of Davenport and hearing what everyone's needs are.
Thank you, Jane, and welcome to the commission. I don't need to ask anybody in the audience if you've got a cell phone. I'd appreciate if you turn it off because on silent it could interfere with our audio. We'll get started with our public hearing. Roll call, please.
Connell present. Hepner.
Here.
Ingram.
Present.
Johnson.
Present.
Lammers. Excused. Aminus. Excused. Mid.
Here.
Quinn.
Here.
Reinert. Excused. And Tallman. Excused. And, well, they got vacant. It's Jane.
Jane.
Here.
She's here.
Yep. Present. We have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Connell. First item of business is public hearing case number REZ 18-14 is a request of Dan Elias to rezone 1.49 acres MOL, a property located at 4435 East 53rd Street from R2 Low Density Dwelling District to PDD Planned Development District. Hi, Matt.
Hello. I'm Matt Flynn, Community Planning and Economic Development Department. For those new either on the commission or in the audience, just to let you know, at the public hearing, staff gives a brief presentation providing an overview with maybe some preliminary identification of some of the issues. It's not a time for staff to make a recommendation. It's really time for everybody to kind of listen to the pieces of the puzzle come together on this case. You'll hear from not only myself but the petitioner, and we provide notice to property owners within 200 feet and post a sign on the property. So there may be some neighbors that also have some questions or concerns to raise. So what we have before you is 1.5 acre site, 1.49 acres. There's a proposal for an automated car wash that would allow there is some additional room on the site to allow for additional commercial development. We've already identified, and it's one of the reasons why things have been tabled, is trying to look for a way to get ingress and egress into the site, not only for eastbound traffic but also westbound, and that would be in and out. We'll talk a little bit about that, and I know that the petitioner will want to kind of share some of the ideas he's come up with. Another concern is that this property is surrounded on two sides, south and west sides, by single-family residential. I think the question is will the intensity of this development be able to be, I'll say, accepted and by the neighbors who are in pretty close proximity. The city's comprehensive plan, again, it's a generalized document. We'll get into it a little bit more, but it calls for the property to be developed under a residential general classification. Again, that is not strictly residential. Does allow some higher intensity uses, particularly on the edges of those areas. And then finally, as we'll talk a little bit more in the regular agenda, it's not too early to be thinking about what is the proposed zoning ordinance have to say for the property. We have already developed a draft zoning map. It's under revision as we speak. We even were working on it today. And what we've identified this property, at least initially, is that it would be appropriately zoned RT, which is residential transition, which is largely an office, would allow residential, but would allow some higher intensity uses such as professional offices, medical clinics, and personal services. So again, this map is actually on the existing zoning ordinance. Property is currently zoned R2. To the east is property everybody's familiar with. That's the Sophie Foster property, which was had a development of both commercial and multifamily residential development moving forward, and was actually withdrawn by the petitioner once it got past the plan zoning stage. So the zoning remains in place, PDD, planned development, as well as residential PUD. To the north is a C2 zoning classification. That's the Russell office complexes and some other development. Again, here's the comprehensive plan showing really I'll say the borders between this regional commercial, which is one of the more intense broad land use categories, and residential general. And again, being on the edge, I think it's reasonable to be thinking of something other than low density single family development on this site. The question for everybody will be to determine whether or not what is proposed is appropriate. Here's that definition from the comprehensive plan. Again, it's not strictly residential, but it does talk about some higher intensity on the edges, particularly along arterial streets, and you know, as has come up a number of times over the past several months, this whole question about the character of 53rd Street, not only in this immediate vicinity, but you can go points west as well. Not to dwell on those where it's come into question. What is the appropriate land use, and can the development and traffic and land use, can all those impacts work together and create a workable situation? Oh. That slide's a little out of place, but gives you a preview. What I've done, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time with the information that the applicant has prepared. I know he wants to come up and kind of talk through things, but again, this shows the proposed car wash, a potential additional development to the east. There's been a lot of effort to try and find a workable solution for westbound traffic here, and what was shared with us yesterday would be a dedicated left turn lane into the property. We have not, as a city staff, been able to totally evaluate that. I think there's still some concerns there. And again, as I mentioned, there is low density residential on both sides here. Again, elevations of the car wash. This is the existing facility the applicant owns and operates on Devil's Glen Road in Bettendorf, it is across immediately east of the Hy-Vee. One of the questions that's come up, and again, I won't explain the data, I'll leave that up to the applicant, is the impact of noise. Car washes can be noisy if they're not designed correctly, depending on the mechanics and I'll say the physical configuration of the site. And I will give the developer credit, again, trying to find and provide evidence that shows that that impact is not going to be impactful to the neighborhood, and I'll let him talk about that further. Again, he's provided some decibel calculations and some additional data. He may want to come back to those as he gets up here. So, again, no recommendation from staff. We definitely have some concerns, but again, we recognize developers, trying hard to work through those, and we will be providing a recommendation to you at your next meeting on October 16th. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Matt. Commissioner Quinn.
Matt, you mentioned RT, residential transition, but the slide said CT, commercial transition. Is there a difference between the two?
Between the,
It was the
RG
slide.
is the comprehensive plan.
It was the slide previous to this, I think. Maybe a couple. Keep going. At the bottom there, staff draft designates the property as CT, commercial transition. That's in the upcoming plan.
That's correct. The existing zoning is R2. The proposal is for PDD plan development, which again would include the requirement of a land plan, which was included on another slide, but will also require a final development plan, much more detailed drawings to be accompanied this rezoning request if it moves forward.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions for Matt at this time? Thank you, Matt. Would the petitioner like to step forward and explain his project?
Can I move this?
Yes.
Let's see if I can. Sorry, I have a foot problem, so I can't stand for too long. So. Can you hear me now? Okay, good. Okay. Thanks for bearing with me. Hi, I'm Dan Elias. I grew up in Davenport, went to Buchanan Elementary School. When I was in 5th grade, my family moved to Bettendorf, and I graduated from Bettendorf High School and went on to St. Ambrose University and graduated with several degrees. As you see, I'm one of those graduates who actually stayed home and didn't leave the area. In the last 33 years, I've been involved with 2 businesses where we have 6 locations throughout the Quad Cities where we employ 60-plus employees. I'm here to ask you to I'm here today to ask to rezone a property at 4435 East 53rd Street. The 1.5 acre lot was originally a house that got torn down 2 years ago. As the lot sits, it's very hard to think another house will be built there because of the size of the lot, plus the amount of traffic flow that's there right now, and not to mention the purchase price. So the lot sits empty as today. Our vision is to build a fully automated exterior express car wash. It will be the state-of-the-art equipment, computer-controlled, multi-wash stage equipment. Customers drive up to the auto teller machine, and I can show you, select their wash, and drive in their cars in the tunnel, where staff members will prep the car in less than 5 minutes to come out clean, dry, and shiny. We will offer free vacuums, free self-service vacuums, and free mat cleaners for customers, plus we will offer a doggy wash. Summer hours are 7 to 9, winter hours are 8 to 6. The proposed lot is surrounded by houses to the west, houses to the south, and empty farmland to the east. We met with neighbors to hear their concerns, and here's where their concerns were. Water runoff, car wash noise. First was water runoff, second was the car wash noise, third was the closeness to their houses. To combat these issues, we took one issue at a time. The water issue, we will create a bioswale that'll be, can I actually point on this thing? Right up in this area? Matt, is there a pointer? infrared button. Okay. So we'll create a bioswale right here. What we would determine, meeting with the families that live there, that they had standing water in this corner, which is the northwest corner. So we will move the water, obviously by creating a bioswale, getting the water to this close to the street and out to the street versus going back to their houses. The second issue that the neighbors had was the noise, and the noise producers in our equipment are our dryers, and we actually had the car wash designed where the car wash was actually closer to the houses on the south side, and we made some changes to our drawing with the help of the city and got our dryers closer to the street, so away from the houses. The third thing that we had the concern with the neighbors was the closeness of the houses, and then I think, and I'll show you here in a minute, so in order to combat that issue, we decided to obviously build a lot of trees around the houses and put a 6-foot barrier fence around the lot itself. One of the things that I did here, if I can show this really clear, this is where the dryers are, and you can see how far the back of the houses are to the dryers, anywhere from 210 feet to 227 to some of these are 300. And why that's a concern is because our equipment does make noise. The dryers make a lot of noise, and this is from a company that we use their equipment, and this shows the if you're 60 feet away, what's the decimal of the 30 horsepower motor versus if you're 10 feet away. Obviously, the house is being 180 feet and above, that reduces the sound. To understand sound, if you are on a busy highway, the normal decimal point at a normal highway is 70. So if you're sitting there at 70, so obviously we want to be less than 70. We want to be closer to 50. So the further away you are, the further away you are, the less noise you will have. So this is a GIS map that I took from Scott County assessors, and just to show you how far the houses are to that. Because I have one of these washes in Bettendorf and I built it, obviously we want to be environmentally conscious, and the things that we use are biodegradable soaps. We reclaim and recycle the majority of our water that we use, so we reuse the water. In our old wash, we're using 40% of the wash, and that technology is 8 years old, so today's technology will improve the amount of water that we reclaim and recycle for reuse. And we use what we call VFD motors to minimize noise and energy usage. So what that means is, if you have, because it's a tunnel wash, which means you drive in, they prep your car, and then you get on a conveyor, and it pulls you through. The more cars you have, obviously the more the motor is going to kick on. For the 25 horsepower motor will use more energy. But if you have one car, it doesn't use the same amount of energy, which reduces sound and then energy usage. Our wash does not function without staff for customer safety reasons. Weather permitting, if we are open, we have staff on site because they have to be there at all times. So this is not a car wash where you're going to drive up to at 2 o'clock in the morning and get a car wash. It doesn't work that way. If we're not open because of rain, we're not going to have staff there. But if we are open, we have staff. And minimum staff that we have at any given time is 2 people. Thank you. I think I'm a little nervous, but thanks.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions of the petitioner? Commissioner Hefner.
Mr. Elias, I had a question. Do the decibel levels that you showed us take into account the landscaping and the fence?
No.
No. So those are just straight line.
Straight line, yes. Like if you don't have anything, I'm trying to find it.
So I can probably assume that those decibel levels will be less than what you have shown,
Yes.
based on the landscaping stuff that you're planning to do.
Yes.
Okay.
And one of the things I want to show you, when I built the one in Bettendorf, as you can see, oh, sorry. This is the wash. This is a retail building, and this is a house. And we've been there for 8 years. If anybody have used it, we've never had a complaint in 8 years because of sound. And then we had condos across the street that were about 150 feet away. When I went to build this, they had a lot of noise was an issue for them. But in the 8 years that we've been open down here, I've never had a complaint of the condos on Maple Crest or this house that's existing right there. Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson.
Could you just repeat your hours of operation?
Yeah, in the summer we're going to be open 7 to 9, and in the winter we're going to be 8 to 6. So it's a regular business hours. Thank you.
Any additional questions? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Elias.
So I'm off the hook now?
Right now. Would anybody in the audience like to speak in favor of the petition? Seeing none? Oh, yeah. Would anybody in the audience like to speak in opposition? Please step forward, identify yourself, and
Good evening. I'm Nick Stuckey. I'm a resident near the property. I've got a couple slides that I'd like to show. And while they load up, while these load up, so I live at 5221 Amesbury. This is directly in my backyard. And as you look out from my house, it goes downhill a little bit into the creek bed and then basically straight up to the Sophie Foster property. I couldn't find good GIS information to measure exactly what the elevation is. I would estimate it's probably 20 to 25 feet between the lowest point in my property to the highest point on the proposed rezoning property. So that's one issue that I've got. Dan says he's going to build a bioderm the petitioner says he's going to build a bioderm to help alleviate that. That's possible, but it will have to be very large, and the end of the property as it comes out from 53rd is going to be probably a no-go to get it up onto 53rd. It's 10 to 15 feet there. So I would encourage the commissioners to get accurate topographical information showing the runoff areas there. I recognize that there's an ordinance that protects from stormwater runoff. That is actually less of a concern for me personally. The concern is the chemicals used in a car wash. I recognize that there will be protections in place to try to make sure that none of those things happen, but accidents do happen, and when or if they do, a large rainfall, an accidental spill, etc., those things will come directly into my backyard. This map, which of course I've just created today, shows sort of the water flow as it comes down through the backyards. The three that sort of are adjacent to this property will receive the initial load of anything that comes out, but it actually transfers down into the existing creek bed. Let me find that pointer. So down here is that existing creek bed. We are right at the head of that, where the pond is, just north of 53rd. So when the pond overflows, it comes down through our yards into the drainage that ends up becoming that creek. So any chemicals whatsoever, a gas station, a mechanic shop, oil changes, car washes, anything that deals in chemicals on a regular basis presents a serious hazard on an accidental basis, of course, but a serious hazard for coming through all of these properties. And that creek bed is 30 feet from my fence line, so it's going to come well into my property, and should something like that happen, it will be very expensive and a pretty big issue to clean up. So the second issue that I have specifically with the car wash is the abundance of automated car washes already available in the area. There are currently 2 gas station car washes that are drive-through that are on 53rd, easily accessible, and as far as I'm concerned, reasonably priced. There's also a full-service automated wash, which, based on the description of the petitioner's proposal, would be in direct competition. So in this area, there's already a lot of opportunities to wash your car. So I'm not sure I see the demand necessitating creating yet another one. As a resident here, I've been here for a couple years, and I recognize that this area is going to be developed. I mean, I knew when I moved in that it was going to be developed. It was, at the time, and still is, I believe, low-density residential. We had hoped that it would continue to be that nicer homes or something like that would be built there that exit onto 53rd directly. They are well off of 53rd. If you go all the way back to the fence line, you could build nice homes there and not be up against 53rd as it stands. At the edge of my property, I'm not sure I could hit a golf ball that far, but I don't play golf. So it's quite a ways up there. I think it's reasonable to consider that this could still be a residentially zoned area. Thank you for your time.
Would anybody else like to speak?
Hi, thanks for letting us speak. My name's Oliver Ivory. I'm at 5144 Hamilton Court. I'm the house directly behind where the proposed car wash would go. And I'd just like to say, first of all, I know Dan, he coached my kid in soccer, and I'm not opposed to development. I have a small financial practice myself, so I understand and appreciate the hard work that goes into owning your own thing. My main thing would be the noise. Our fence line is right there. Our pools are right next to it. And I appreciate that, it may only be the decibel level of, driving on the highway, but the reason we enjoy the pool is we don't have any decibel level. So if those concerns could be addressed adequately, other than just what we hope the level would be, I just wanted to go on record saying I'm not opposed to development there, just our main concern would be our quality of life living right directly behind that. So appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
I'm Julie Ivory. I'm married to Oliver. Hi, Dan. Good to see you after all these years. My issue with the noise is privacy. I have kids swimming in my pool, all ages babies all the way up to teenagers. You never know who's on the other side of that fence looking in when they're waiting for their car to be washed. And we have, our bedroom window up there with the lights on. If it's going to be on until 9 o'clock at night, I'll have to have my shades drawn. But I guess privacy is the main issue for me. I just want to make sure that everybody's safe. Hey, Tom. Safe in our yard and feel safe back there and feel that we have our privacy when we're walking around in our swimming suits and doing our yard work.
Thank you. Anybody else?
My name is Lori Hughes, and I live at 5143 Hamilton Court, next to Julie and Oliver. And privacy is a huge issue. We have, as you know from all of our previous encounters, a very alive, healthy neighborhood. We socialize, we enjoy our backyards, we entertain in our backyards. We are the neighborhood that Davenport should be proud of. I've said that many times, and I just want to reiterate for the record that that's the truth. We entertain extensively in the backyard in the summer. We have a big, huge maple tree with tree swings. We have what we call our Zen garden, a little 10 by 10 canopy in the back corner, really like 8 feet from the fence. We take it down in the winter. We put it up in the summer. we have chairs and couches and things back there. We actually have grapevines, so it's behind the grapevines, and it's a nice little private space. But I can tell you, with a road and a car wash 10 feet on the other side of the fence, especially if they remove all the trees that are back there, it is not going to be a place that we would want to spend any time. And I think Julie and Oliver would say the same about their pool. You know, they have a pool and a fence and then a line of trees, and that's of the barrier. You know, all of this development would be just 10 feet away on the other side of that, and I think it would really destroy the awesome backyards that we have and the quality of life. Again, it's a privacy, it's a noise thing, and I'd like for you all to take that into consideration, and I'm happy for any of you to come to my backyard sometime if you'd like to see what I'm talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
I'm Chris Kennecke, and we own the property at 5237 Amesbury Drive. We're moving. We're in the process of moving right now. Our concern is privacy, number one, traffic on 53rd, number two, and the fact that when you're driving on 53rd going east, there's a little hump in the road and you really can't see cars. We've had accidents in that area before because it's a blind spot. I understand the car wash with all the decibels and all that. What about the vacuum cleaners? Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things to look at too, because they can be quite noisy in that. And I guess I'm just looking at property values because there's 3 houses, my house and the 2 houses next to us. We have half-acre lots. We were part of the original tract in that whole thing. What is this development going to do to our property values? Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
How you guys doing today? Wasn't prepared for this, but do have a lot of concerns.
I need to have you identify yourself first, please.
Okay, my name is Tracy Springfield.
Thank you.
I live at 5229 Amesbury Drive, Davenport.
Thank you.
And concerns are like she was saying, the house, 3 houses. My house sits second house from the corner. Okay, I'm already I have the sister drain in my yard, and it already comes down like this. I mean, coming with a new, to me, an unnecessary car wash. That's, to me, it's just, I mean, it's a neighborhood. I mean, our property values, I mean, when we bought it, I know we didn't plan on staying there for the rest of our lives, but the money we invested, our return, we expected a bigger return, that everything would go up, but it seems like with that's not going to take everything up. That's going to bring everything down. I know, it's our community, these people here, we all live in the neighborhood, it means a lot to us, to outsiders. Doesn't mean as much to outsiders because they're not losing. They don't have anything to lose. I mean, the developers they're gonna make money on it. They're gonna gain. They're gonna have great gains, but we're all gonna have losses. I mean, and if you can, if you're gonna think about the development side and what it's gonna do for Davenport, think about what it's gonna do for the residents who've been there for the last 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. I mean, there's people there now who are trying to sell and the market's not good and they can't, sell their properties. What is that going to do? I mean, if you allow them to come in, I mean, that would be great if this was a a rental neighborhood. If they're going to buy up all the houses in the neighborhood and rent it to people, then that's good too. And then, if we got the retail value of our property, that would be great. But if not, that's not helping our community at all. It might help, the city of Davenport, to grow. I mean, another car wash, and there's a car wash on both sides of our house already. I mean, it's going to bring a lot more traffic. It's going to bring a lot more people in. I mean, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I wasn't prepared for this, but it's just not. It doesn't seem like that's something that's needed. I mean, there's doctors' offices on one side, stockbrokers on the other side, residents, and then you want to put a car wash there. That just, to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Not a lot of good sense anyway. I mean, if you guys, I don't know where you guys live, but if you think about it, and to help that community, our community, which is a school community. A lot of people move there because of the school district. I mean, it's bringing in a lot of things that, it's tearing it down and not building it up. So, that's pretty much it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Commissioners, any additional questions? Commissioner Hefner.
Mr. Elias, I've got a question for you. Yes, please. I want to make you walk again. You do own the property in Bettendorf, Devil's Glen Car Wash, correct?
Yes.
How many chemical spills have you had there?
In 8 years, we have none.
Zero.
Zero.
That's all I had for you, Mr. Elias. Thank you.
Can I make some comments? They brought some good points up. Can I comment
Yes.
on what they...
Please move the microphone around so we can hear you, though.
As you enter the car wash, as you enter the car wash, you go on this road and you obviously drive all the way up here, and I'm sorry, as you drive up here, you pay right there. That's the pay station, and you come in through the car wash right here, and then you obviously go to the tunnel and you come out. Either you're gonna go vacuum or you leave. One of the things that I heard from the Olivers, and these are very good points, is where we are as far as how close I am to their house. And one of the things I want you to understand is, don't forget that we have our 20-foot setback from the property line. The other thing is, in order for us to have a turning radius, our building is going to be at least 45 feet from the 20-foot setback. So we're technically going to be about 65 feet to the fence, because I need that turning radius in order for cars to come in here. So I want to make sure we understand that. And the other thing that they've brought up is noise and privacy. Obviously, the berm and the trees are going to help, and the fence, the 6-foot fence, is going to help. But I think people don't realize is the noise producers are right here. The 25 horsepower motors that are making all the noise right here. Where originally I had them on the entryway where they come in the tunnel. I moved them out here, and one of the things that you got to keep in mind, they're inside an enclosed environment. So they're motors that run 25 horsepower motors that run, but they're in an enclosed concrete block building so that should reduce a lot of the noises that they were hearing. So by putting up a privacy fence, by putting a berm in, by putting the trees in, by moving the noise, what we call noise producers, to the end closer to the street, should alleviate a lot of the concerns that they had.
Thank you. Commissioner Hefner.
Sorry, Dan or Mr. Elias, do you have exterior vacuum cleaners at this facility?
Yes.
And do you know what the decibel levels of those things are going to be?
They work off that VFD motor, which means that the horsepower of the motor is 25 horsepower motor. So when you pull one vacuum hose, you may run it at 5 horsepower. So it's and it escalates. If you have a full, you may have a usage of all 25 horsepower out there.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? Commissioner Med.
Thank you. Mr. Elias, are you satisfied with the ingress-egress situation there?
It's in order to survive, that's what I need. Ideally, I'd like to have right in, right. I want to turn east, I want to turn west, but this is working with staff or talking to staff and some of the concerns they had. I feel that this will work, and this kind of reminds me. If you look at this egress and ingresses, it reminds me of being on Brady or being on 53rd between Brady and Harrison, going into Hardee's, something similar to that, and that's a very high traffic area, and it seems to have worked there. So I see it working here. I understand leaving our site and turning left may be difficult because of the amount of traffic on that road, but I think having that third way in will help our business and help our development. And one thing I want to remind people is, again, I'm a local guy. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not building this to selling it. I have other businesses here. The people that do know me here obviously know that I'm here for the long term. I want to be a good neighbor.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Elias. We will close case number REZ 18-14. It will return to us October 16th with staff's recommendation. That will close the public hearing for tonight. We'll move on to our regular meeting agenda. Roll call, please.
Connell, present. Hepner,
Here.
Ingram,
Present.
Johnson. Present. Lammers and Manus is excused. Med.
Here.
Quinn.
Here.
Reinertz and Tallman are excused, and Jane Schneider.
Here.
We have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Connell. Report of city council activity.
Nothing more to add.
Thank you, Matt. Secretary's report.
Move the report.
I'll second.
Secretary's report has been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Signify by aye. Opposed? Hearing none, it will stay as written. Report of Comp Plan Commission. Matt?
Comp Plan Committee.
That's what I meant. Thank you.
Yeah, if I could just give an update on the zoning ordinance update. It's getting serious, ladies and gentlemen. At your next meeting on October 16th, there'll be a public hearing before the Plan and Zoning Commission. There's a preview item in your packet today, and rather than try to totally reinvent the wheel, I just strongly encourage you to take a look at the project website, www.davenportzoning.com, and take a look at the materials. We have not only a draft ordinance, but even just as a refresher, looking at some of the approaches, technical reports that were done early, I think help provide a good basis for what we're trying to accomplish. Also, take a look at the panels that were provided at the neighborhood meetings and the PowerPoint presentation. A little bit more compact version of what we're trying to accomplish versus the 203-page document. One of the things that you won't see on there right this minute is the latest version of the zoning map. And between myself and Ryan and Brandon and Scott, with input from economic development and Bruce sprinkled in, we have been trying, it's daunting, but we're trying to at least put eyes on all 41,443 parcels in the city to make sure that we are not making any, I'll say, crazy choices when it comes to zoning. We're finding a number of, particularly of course the older parts of the city, a lot of uses that we don't want to make non-conforming. In some cases that's going to be the case, but we are spending a lot of time on that, and quite possibly even when we have the public hearing in 2 weeks, we may not have a version of the map that staff is 100% comfortable with. We've got, beyond the Plan and Zoning Commission, there'll be the council's shot at it, another public hearing, and 3 readings, just like any rezoning effort. So I mentioned the project website, www.davenportzoning.com, but there are also hard copies of the map, the version of the map that was last Friday's version, which is different from today's version, at the following locations. First of all, in our offices, second floor, City Hall, at the Hilltop Campus Village office, which is at 122 East 15th Street, at the Eastern Branch Library, the Fairmont Street Library, Fairmont Branch, and also at the Davenport Public Works Center at 46 and Tremont. That's all.
Thank you, Matt. A couple weeks ago, I sent out an email and highly recommended that all of the commissioners take a serious look at the website and the zoning maps. I would appreciate, I wish we had a full house tonight, but I would appreciate everybody spending some serious time on this. I know staff has spent an incredible amount of time. This is a massive project, and I think we owe it to them to spend some of your valuable spare time to be educated when it comes time to take a look at this in 2 weeks. And then the following 2 weeks to take a vote on it. I would appreciate if anybody's got any questions to send them off to staff. But I would highly encourage that you spend some time taking a look at it. Commissioner Madden.
Thank you. I did get that homework assignment. Thank you. But Matt, I just have one question. The materials that we got in today's package seemed like a report of what they would like to see. I've read all of that, and I've been trying to tie some of it into the 203 pages. Did the city take all of the recommendations, or should I expect to see all of them, or are there some of them that were overlooked,
well,
not accepted?
You know, when you hire a zoning consultant to lead a community through a process like this, you're not asking them, hey, give us your best zoning ordinance. It's to lead the community through a process to identify the values that are uniquely Davenport's, rather than, well, you know, what they need is the Pittsburgh zoning ordinance, but with a few tweaks here and there. You know, some consultants, quite honestly, will take that approach. If they're good, they can mask it pretty quickly. But, you know, going back to when Camiros was selected, recommended by staff and selected by council, was their ability to really listen to the community and help us produce the code we want, rather than the kind of code that they're used to cranking out as you know, one of the top quite honestly, the top zoning firms in the country. Believe it or not, there are companies that specialize in zoning, and Camiros is one of those. So, you know, they've helped us through the process. You know, and I'll make one other editorial comment. We've had a few people call or stop in, send an email almost apologizing for asking questions maybe late in this game, but that's not the case at all. We want questions. We want some potential red flags out there identified. We know this isn't going to be perfect when we get through it, and we're fully prepared and expect to have to do some tweaking once the ordinance is adopted. But people shouldn't be embarrassed or feeling like they're late to the party by asking questions up at this point. There can be questions and there can be amendments to both the ordinance and map all the way up to the third reading, and we welcome that feedback.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Gary. Any additional questions? Seeing none, we will move on to zoning activity. Commissioner Red.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have no old business tonight, but we have one item of new business. Case FDP 18-04, request of Sean Agan for a PDD planned development district final development plan for a self-storage facility on 1.43 acres, more or less, located at 3730 West Locust Street. Staff recommends the Plan and Zoning Commission accept the listed findings and forward this case to the City Council with a recommendation for approval subject to the one condition. And I so move.
Second.
Case FDP 18-04 has been moved and seconded for discussion. Ryan?
Yes, just very quickly, this is a property that this Plan and Zoning Commission had provided a recommendation on to rezone to PDD. That's advancing its way to City Council as we speak. And so this request for a final development plan fulfills some of those obligations that the rezoning and land use plan had put forth. Currently, the proposal is, and don't expect you to see it, but kind of a driveway in the front with a circular drive around the self-storage units. We're looking at 14,425 square feet of storage units. There is a detention area to the north area that would outfall to the east into a private system. But the conditions that were recommended for the rezoning was that no storage units be located within 150 feet of West Locust, no self-storage units face West Locust, and that a 6-foot high fence be installed along the north, east, and west property lines, and that kind of helps it fit in to be a little bit more compatible with those surrounding zonings. And just the only condition is obviously that the council needs to approve the rezoning of the property in order to allow this final development plan. But the way it'll come forth on the city council is the rezoning will be considered first, and then the final development plan. But I don't know, as Matt mentioned, as we constantly stare at the zoning, you know, these real cases, we kind of think about these things and say, you know, is there appropriate places in, say, a heavier commercial district that we should consider self-storage units? And so we kind of try and bring ourselves back to these real things and you know, how do we want this in our new zoning ordinance? So, thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Commissioners, any questions? Would the petitioner or anybody in the audience like to speak for or against? It's not mandatory, just asking.
Good evening. I'm Jimmy Holt, owner of the property at 3730 West Locust, Davenport, Iowa. On a positive, I own approximately 3 different properties throughout the West Locust corridor from Fairmont out to West Locust. Currently working on revamping the old Eagles Club on the corner of Emerald and Locust Street. So I got a lot of fun things happening. I own 5 acres out on 280 in Utah. This is a first phase of many things I'd like to do on this side of town. Been on this side of town for approximately 25 years, grew up on Rockingham Road, and just really excited to try to get some momentum going over here. It's really kind of a dead weight of an area right now, and I'd like to see some dirt being moved with some different things happening. Eventually, the second phase of this, if all goes well, is try to put a 9,000 square foot retail space along this area as well too. So try to get some different businesses going over there and some fun things going. So if you've been up on West Locust lately, the Eagles Club is definitely taking form. A lot of neat things happening there. We're trying to give it a facelift, and we want to continue the momentum, and hopefully you guys can help out with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, any final questions before we vote? Seeing none? Roll call, please.
Hepner.
Yes.
Ingram. Or Johnson.
Yes.
Med.
Yes.
Quinn.
Yes.
Schneider.
Yes.
And Connell. Yes. Motion passes, Mr. Chair.
That concludes the zoning report.
Thank you, Commissioner Med. Moving on to subdivision activity.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Hepner.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. This evening we have no old business, but new business. We have the case ROW 18-03 that has been withdrawn.
Could I ask staff, could I get a little backstory on this? I wasn't
Absolutely.
here at the last meeting. I was up at Mayo. I'd like to know a little history on this.
So at the time, it was thought that, so we had this alley that deaded into a property. There was a neighborhood dispute amongst 3 of those people that surrounded there. At the time in the field, it appeared that there was less than 8.5 feet of width at the end of that alley. The minimum width for a parking stall for the city of Davenport is 8.5 feet. And so we had an issue with the property owner at the end of the alley using that. The city did not grant a curb cut for that reason. And kind of, I think one of the initial public hearing, the attorney representing the property owner at the end, suggested that the city obtain a survey. We felt like that was a good idea. If we were going to physically vacate property, we want to make sure what we have in the field. The survey actually revealed that he has 10 feet of width along that alley. And so it was the city staff's opinion that it would not be appropriate to vacate a portion of that alley, considering he has a legal right to access and create a parking spot off of that alley. And so that it's in the packet, but the survey is actually in the packet, which shows the 10 foot of width.
Okay, I saw that. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Next case is case F18-12, request of Joseph Stour for a final plat for a second lot subdivision located west of Waverly Road and south of West 15th Street Court. Staff recommends the Plan and Zoning Commission accept the listed findings and forward case F18-12 to the City Council with a recommendation for approval subject to the 4 following conditions, and I so move.
Case number F18-12 has been moved and seconded for discussion. Ryan?
This is just a larger lot that's being subdivided into 2 lots, so it's a very straightforward request. So any questions that you have, I'm happy to answer them.
Commissioners? Roll call, please.
Johnson,
Yes.
Med,
Yes.
Quinn,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Connell, yes. Hepner,
Yes.
and that's all. Motion passes, Mr. Chair.
The last case before us this evening is case F-13, request of Christine Hall Shields Trust for a final plat for a second lot subdivision located west of Jersey Ridge Road, approximately 0.3 miles north of East Kimberly Road. Staff recommends the Plan and Zoning Commission accept the listed findings and forward case F18-13. I guess I had that wrong in my packet.
Correct.
To the City Council with a recommendation for approval, subject to the 6 following conditions, and I so move.
Second.
Case F18-13 has been moved and seconded for discussion. Ryan?
This is a similar case. It's just a subdivision of a larger lot into 2 lots to provide for another home site. Thank you.
Commissioners, any questions? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Med,
Yes.
Quinn,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Connell, yes. Hepner,
Yes.
and Johnson.
Yes.
Item passes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
That's all I have this evening, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you, Commissioner Hepner. That would close out subdivision. We've got one item of future business, which Matt spoke of earlier regarding the new zoning ordinance. I highly, again, encourage everybody to take a look at that. Communications. I do have one piece of communication. I know one of the neighbors of the petitioner for the car wash asked us to come out and meet with her. While I encourage you to take a look at the property of the petitioner and the surrounding homes, I need to remind you to discourage any conversation with any of the neighbors, as that would fall into ex parte. You're there to strictly take a look, and if they feel they need to talk to you, then you just have to politely turn them down. I, again, appreciate you going out and taking a look at it, because I do see some issues, but at the same time, we need to have all communications be within this room. Additional business, Matt, is there anything? Okay. I have no additional business. Anybody in the commission? Seeing none?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Please drive home safely. Thank you for your attendance.